350 California Street was worth $300 million 4 years ago. It's a 22-story glass and stone tower. It's a picture of it. It's going up for sale. And they believe, according to the Wall Street Journal, that bids will come in at $60 million, an 80% decline. And we talked about this. Commercial real estate would have this moment. A lot of the banks, the smaller regional banks, own this debt. Sachs, what do you think is going to happen here? Who is the person who would buy an office tower in downtown, even at an 80% discount, knowing that you have to pay all those carrying costs and there's so much vacant office space and it's only increasing?
Right.
Who buys this?
It's called land banking.
Okay, explain.
So in other words, okay, what I mean is, you're right, there's 30% vacancy in San Francisco right now, maybe going up even more in the next few years as leases roll and people take less space. You may have a countervailing effect in terms of new companies moving back because of AI or expanding. So it's possible you start to see some growth in the office market in San Francisco. But the bottom line is 30% plus vacancy is going to take years and years of growth in order to absorb. So you're right, this building, they can slash its rent, but they still probably can't fill it. I mean, there's just no demand. So you're going to be sitting on that property for 5 years, 10 years before the market comes back the way that you need it to.
But there's some value, right?
Oh, it's going to trade way below its replacement cost.
Right.
If you were to build that building today, it would cost you many times what they're going to pay for it. The problem is you can't finance that purchase with debt because the building's not going to generate enough revenue. So that's what I mean by land banking. It's going to have to be an equity investor who's willing to think long term and say, I'm going to buy this at a super distressed price, and I'm just going to sit there and hold it and wait, carry it, like you said, bear the carrying costs until the market comes back.
But JCal, I want to say something. I think it's a great analogy because public growth stocks have declined 70+%, right, since the market started to decline. And we've talked a lot about the statistic that I've shared a bunch publicly on how 70% of publicly traded companies that have gone public since 2020 are trading below their total cash invested since founding, which should translate to an estimate that, call it somewhere in the order of 70% of private companies are probably worth less than their preference stack. And so they're not worthless companies. They just have a capital structure that is upside down. Those companies are making products for customers. Those customers are paying money for those products. There's value there. There's real value there. The value's just been reset. And so it's interesting. It's not just the asset class of growth stocks and the asset class of private companies or private tech. It's also, in commercial real estate, we try and treat each of these as if they were in isolation. But the problem is many of these assets were funded with some degree of leverage. Preferred stock is leverage. And it is a form of debt because it has a preference over the shareholders, the common shareholders, the equity holders. And the same is true with this commercial real estate market, that there was a certain amount of debt. So the availability of low-cost capital securitized against some asset in the form of debt or in the form of preferred stock in a private company has the same effect, which it allowed the valuations to balloon on the equity. And now that the market has re-rationalized, the price is down 70+% across all three of these connected, but somewhat disparate asset classes. You're kind of having this big reset moment. And funny enough, the other statistic is the cell phone traffic down 70% in downtown SF, right? So it's funny, all four of these numbers are pretty much on track.
Yeah, this chart is crazy. It's literally like you have some cities that have more cell phone traffic than they did last year or a couple of years ago. And
this is downtown, by the way, not the whole city.
And the wider Bay Area is I don't want to say booming, but it's vibrant.
Yeah.
I said on last week's show, I was looking for a place to host the accelerator in San Mateo area. I got dozens of people contacting me, hundreds of locations, and offers at 25% of what their carrying cost is, or like not the carrying cost, the rent was. And people offering me, major companies offering me free space just because they would like to have founders hanging around. And there was one project that I really liked. The person was like, I'll give it to you for whatever, just because I want to get more people to downtown San Mateo. So that does sort of prove the point that there is and I saw this in New York City during the 90s, when things were so cheap, people just got creative with space. It inspired people to say, I'm going to create an art gallery. I'm going to create a performance space. And I don't know when that happens in San Francisco with these spaces, but feels like it's going to be a while. I don't know when do you think there would be demand for this space, Sachs? If you had to pick a year over and give us an over-under.
I mean, 5 years plus. I mean, just to give you some numbers, I think a healthy vacancy rate in an office market is 5 to 10%. A high vacancy rate in a city was considered like 15%. Like, you wouldn't want to be an office investor in a market that had 15% vacancy. 5 to 10% was sort of the normal range. If you were under 5%, it was a super hot market. And then 10 to 15 was sort of a not great market from an investor standpoint. So they're at 30% plus. And like I said, it could get worse before it gets better, because as leases roll, people are going to shed more space that they might not already be subleasing. So the real number might be like 40%. So
I don't.
I think it's like it doesn't seem like a decade.
Feels like a decade.
It's a decade, assuming that San Francisco gets its house in order and companies come back.
Well, speaking of that,
and new companies are created, and they don't completely wreck it. It's not clear to me that like things will go in the right direction.
I mean, speaking of that, do we want to bring up this horrific bear spray attack now? You want to cue that up, Sachs? I mean, we're like in full-on Gotham City now. Now we have vigilantes.
Right. There was a story of a fire commissioner named Don Carmignani, who was beaten with a metal pipe by a gang of homeless addicts who were encamped in front of his mother's house. And apparently they were harassing her, and they were doing drugs, smoking drugs or whatever, right in front of, not pot. It was like fentanyl or meth or crack, something like a hard drug. And so what we know is he went down there, had words with them, bada beep, bada boop, and they bashed him upside the head with a pipe. And now it turns out that he was accused by the defendant's lawyer, the one who assaulted him. So we don't really know what's true here, of using bear spray on them first. So the DA dropped charges. The lawyer for the defendant in that case is saying that he apparently was the perpetrator of these bear spray attacks on homeless people going back a number of years. I guess there's like you said, pretty gnarly video of that. But we don't know that it's him.
We don't know that it's him.
But obviously the DA thought something was kind of hinky because they dropped charges against the guy who assaulted him.
Shouldn't the person who sprays the bear spray and the person who beats somebody with a pipe, shouldn't both people be arrested?
Look, of course. Listen, there's video of somebody bear spraying homeless people, and that's clearly wrong. However, that was from a couple of years ago. The one that was released is from 2021. We have video from the night that Carmignani was assaulted, that they were chasing him down the street.
They're chasing him down, yes.
With the metal pipe. And even if they were acting in self-defense, you can't go chasing the guy to
That's not self-defense.
More damage on him. Exactly. That's vengeance. That's not self-defense.
Yes.
So they took it out of that zone of self-defense, and they were chasing after him. And if you saw what he looked like after the attack, they were using deadly force. He could have been killed. And, if Donna had gotten killed by the metal pipe, I don't think it'd be a defense that he bear sprayed them first.
No, it'd just be
to that, because it would have been an excessive use of force. So, but in any event, I mean, where the DA ended up on this, it was just to drop charges from that night. But
I don't know that they're going to drop those charges. I think that's going to be untenable.
No, they already dropped the charges.
They have to. I mean, justice has to be blind, correct? I mean, you're a trained lawyer here. We have to apply the law equally to the sadistic, insane person who. And wait a second, they arrested the guy who hosed the person down. Didn't they arrest them as well? I remember seeing a perp walk. We talked about that on a previous show. Anyway, it's Gotham City, folks. This has gone to pure insane levels.
I don't think this disproves anything. I mean, again, what they're trying to say now is that because of the actions that Don took, that San Francisco is safe and there's nothing to worry about. And these
addicts,
people who are encamped on the sidewalks doing drugs, doing hard drugs, there's nothing to worry about because somehow they were provoked by Carmignani. And I just think I agree with you that this is part of an overall pattern of chaos and lawlessness in the city. It is like Gotham City. So, it doesn't make me feel a lot better about what's happening on the streets.
It's nuts.